Welcome back to the channel. My name's Tefty.
And I'm Meems.
Today we're doing a studio tour.
Finally!
This is our very first studio tour, actually.
We were just thinking about it for quite some time.
We have been, yeah. The reason why we haven't done a studio tour yet is because historically, I always change things around every 6 months. Pulled things out, switch around, all this stuff. Since the pandemic, I actually haven't really changed things around a year and a half, almost, which is like a record, actually, for me not pulling everything apart and rearranging all that stuff. Yeah. So our studio is actually set up to be able to be relatively modular, and we've had to make a lot of adjustments for doing YouTube as well. The more we've gotten into doing YouTube content for the music production side, the more adaptation has happened with the technology. So I'm gonna try my best to be as descriptive as possible with how the setup is, because it's definitely not a typical setup, and you're gonna be camera operator, right?
That's right, DP.
Memes, that's right.
Just kidding.
Director of photography.
I wish.
For this cinematic adventure.
I wish.
All right, let's get to it. So starting over on this side, I've got the Microfreak. I actually don't even have it plugged in audio-wise. I use this for some interesting sounds, you know, when I want something esoteric and all that. So it gets used from time to time, but the main workhorse synths are honestly the Summit and the Pro 3 right here. These get the job done for like 90% of the stuff that I need if I'm producing a track, if we're working on something soundtracky or something like that, and I need some sounds, these like get the job done most of the time. If you have a peak, you basically have a Summit, but the Summit is like a jumbo peak. It's got, you know, it's basically 2 peaks plus some additional stuff, which, and also the keys itself, the way the keyboard feels. I really appreciate the feel of the keys as well. Pro 3 feels great too, but those two workhorse synthesizers right there. So moving on over to the desk setup, which is messy right now. We could have done some cleanup for this tour, but we didn't.
Well, that's it's the creative process.
Yeah, you got to be messy sometimes to be creative.
You
know, I'm managing wires and all that crap.
Yeah.
It's one of my visions for having a desk set up like this was to be able to treat the gear as like kind of modules or modular, not modular synth, but like the gears are module to be able to put together some sort of production at any given time. So the idea behind the desk is that I can swap in pieces of gear to experiment with, to do sound design and all that at any given time. And the way we achieve that is we have a patch bay on the side right here. This patch bay has, I believe it's 16 channels that are connected to our mixing board off to the side. So this is where everything gets patched in when we're building a setup to do like jams and stuff. Typically the Pro 3 and the Summit are usually patched in all the time. And where that ends up going is right here to our analog mixing desk, the Mackie Onyx 1640i. It's an oldish one. Not old, but you know, it's like 15 years old or something like that.
It's kind of old.
Yeah, it's kind of old. It's not new. The thing about this desk is it's got 16 direct outs and inserts. So each channel, 16 channels, they all have direct outs and inserts on there. So I can patch in analog gear, and I can also have all the direct outs go out to our audio interface, which is a Motu 828. What was it again? Motu 828 ES with a 24 AO. Yes, 24 AO. So we have a total of 32 channels that can go out via analog. If we desire for our mixing purposes, we don't always do that, but sometimes we want to do analog hybrid mixes. So that's the reason behind that. And having it connected with the Mackie mixer, being able to output any of the 16 channels that we directly patch in to the board gives us the freedom, so we don't always have to have a computer on. We don't always have to track things to say Ableton or anything like that. We can just have an analog desk set up some gear, and then make jams, you know, write tracks and that type of thing. So let's go back over the desk here for a second because I didn't fully explain everything that's going on. So now that you guys know the routing, so when gear gets hooked up onto the desk, it gets routed off to the side. So on the YouTube side of things, what we discovered is we like multiple angles of stuff when we're making YouTube videos. So it started with needing an overhead camera type of thing. And originally I was thinking about using like a tripod or something like that. But then I was like, man, I want to just be able to move something around to be able to get like a different angle. And then I was talking to King Gathalion, a streamer, and he said, he posted a photo of one of his cameras being hooked up to a boom arm, and I was like, hey, how do you do that? How do you have it zipped into the wall? And then he sent me the link. It's the 5-foot articulating boom arms. They're not terribly expensive. I think they're like 150 bucks, something like that. And then what we did was zipped in a board to the wall right here, and then added these plates, which the company sells as well, to then have them attached to the wall. Because if they were attached to the desk, they would shake easily every time I'm like making a beat, hitting the pads or something like that. So that's not good. The downside is that if the door gets opened or closed, these end up shaking. So we have to be careful about that. But yeah, it started with just one in the center, and that was obviously working. And then we're like, it'd be nice to have multiple angles. And we had these Panasonic GX85s we'd been using for streaming before. So they were kind of just sitting around. And I thought, well, let's use those and have multiple angles. So again, being able to just like do this and like adjust for an angle on the camera is really awesome. And then I have HDMI outs going into the computer so I can see what I'm doing. In fact, let me set that up real quick. Now that this is on, you can see I can adjust the camera via seeing the computer, and then I can still record it via 4K, but I can see in the computer what the shot looks like and adjust it accordingly. So it's a little excessive.
Yes.
I don't always use these cameras, but there's times where I really want an extra shot, or if like this camera is used quite a bit for getting the MPC screen. When I need to get a more up-close shot of the MPC screen, I end up using this. These Panasonic GX85s are not bad. They're not great, but they're not bad. The biggest thing is that they're light, because you can't really have too much weight on these arms. I think it maxes out at like 2 pounds. So that's one of the things. The main camera that we have for overhead is a GH5S, which is a bit overkill for an overhead cam, but it's a cam that we had left from doing video projects. So that ends up getting the job done. So basically Micro Four Thirds is what the cameras are overhead. And then we have basically 3 camera setups for the eye level stuff. So we have a A6400 right there, another A6400 right here, and then the face cam, which Meems is holding recording with, is a A7S III. Yeah. In terms of lighting, we have one of these nice photo adapter diffuser thingies. This is like a 36-inch one. We actually just recently got this because we switched up our lighting from where it was before. Before we were using some like $50 light that was okay, wasn't bad. But now we're using, I think it's a Godox light with this umbrella diffuser, and it's getting the job done. It's good, I like it. In terms of our lighting around the room, we use Philips Hue lights, which I actually wouldn't recommend for video because they're not good at, because you get a lot of flicker in the lights. We haven't switched those out because we're just kind of dealing with it at the time, but something to keep in mind. If you look at those Philips Hue lights, unfortunately, they're not good for video. So, but they're really cool for mood. How about blue?
That's a mood.
How about, this one's called Creative Stream.
Yeah.
And then pink, I think. This is pink.
Oh yeah.
Here's green. Anyways, go back to the full lights.
City.
Yeah, Emerald City, right? Moving off to the side, we have some rack gear. This is our audio interface setup. We also have our Zoom recorder off to the side. We use a F6 for video, and that captures, oh, I completely forgot, my bad. It captures our boom mic. This is what we use for talking on the videos. It's a Sennheiser MKH416. It is really nice, but it's a bit overkill at times. We have it because of video production, so we use it. So it's a really nice boom overhead mic. That again is plugged into a Zoom F6, which is a 32-bit recorder, and I also have a feed off the analog desk that sends a stereo mix to the Zoom recorder as well. So once again, we don't have to use a computer to be able to capture ideas or come up with like jams or listen to anything. We can have the computer completely off and just plug in a few pieces of gear with the analog desk turned on, and then we're good to go, basically. So yeah, audio interface. We also have a couple of those lexicons. We only use one of them, and Meems reverb on doing a lot of the jams tends to be from that. if it isn't mixed in Ableton afterwards. Moving on to underneath the mixing desk. So here is the patch bay. This is where all the magic happens for the analog stuff. What you're currently seeing right now is a mix from our previous track, Heart Stops. I actually haven't pulled out the cables yet. So these are all, this is the patching that I did for that. There's no labels on here. And the reason there's no labels is because I've changed things so many times that I found it like cumbersome to label things. So what I ended up doing was taking photos of it and then annotating what each patch does on my phone. So anytime if I get confused about something, I just look up on my phone to see where the patch points are supposed to be. So no, I don't remember all this in my head. I do have notes on the phone to keep track of where everything's patched into. So this top S patch right here is connected to all this gear right here. So this tower right here is this top patch. The next one down is this tower of gear. I don't have the reel-to-reel plugged into the patch, so keep that in mind. But all this gear is patched into that second bay. And then this third bay is patched into the inserts of the Mackie and connected to the summing bus of the D-Box right here, which is what I use to monitor everything with. I've used this for almost a decade, and I really like the Dangerous D-Box. I think it's awesome. I know there's a new one that came out, and I would totally just get it again if I needed really, really high quality digital analog converters in there. This fourth patch bay right here, this is what connects the Burl B32 along with the outputs of the Motu, the 24 AO. This is how I'm able to output things out of Ableton, patch them into a certain piece of gear, and then bus them into the B32 Vancouver. Now, I haven't talked about this yet, but this is our summing bus. It is it's a really nice summing bus. It can do 32 channels. I actually only use 24 channels of it right now. And it has transformers in there, and I think it sounds great. I try to hit it just hard enough to get those transformers to warm up, and yeah, it's awesome. So that's that. I do have another patch bay underneath that I think this is like expansion. There's a few other things that go right here that I hardly ever use. I forget what they are though. I'd have to look at my phone. Moving on over here, we have tower number 1. We start with the Clark Technic EQs. These EQs they're okay. They're not exceptional, but they're cheap. And when I need some extra EQ in the analog domain, I always reach for those if I need something quick. Then I've got a 6-pack right here. It's got an Expressor 500 and then the X Filter 500 as well. I like these pieces a lot. I have a Purple Audio Odd, which I use from time to time. And then I have a preamp right here that gets used once in a while, not too often. Actually, if I need to plug in bass, I usually plug in bass right here. Bass guitar, boom, 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 boom. And then we have our main piece of rack, which this gets turned on all the time because we have Meems vocal chain right here, a Rupert Neve 511 going into a Pete's Place BAC 500, going into a Buzz Audio Essence opto compressor, and followed up by a Little Pecker for Purple Audio as well. This chain right here has just been fantastic. We use it for the SM7B. We use it for the WA251. Sometimes I patch in the SM57 to plug in guitar with it as well. It's just a really phenomenal channel strip. It's got FET compression and opto compression and like this tube rendering EQ, like really good. Moving on to the next pieces over here. This is our bus processor, essentially. We use an SS style VCA compressor from West Audio, and then followed into the Prometheus. So West Audio Dione followed into the Prometheus Pultec style. This has been my go-to chain for probably a good year now. I really, really enjoy it. And basically everything just gets run through those pieces of gear. And I do have a API 525 sitting right here, which I also really like this compressor. It's fantastic on bass, guitars, sometimes vocals, but like it's got quite a bit of character. Anytime I need something to have a nice compression character, I reach for that baby. Moving on, we got the Buzz Audio SOC20. It is, once again, an optical compressor, similar to the Essence, but a bit better. It has stereo linking, and you can also do mid-side compression, which I use a lot. I love the mid-side compressor on this. Synths almost always get run through this with mid-side compression. Moving on down, we got the Buzz Audio DBC20. This is the diode bridge compressor. And this gets used, I'd say about 50% of the time. Sometimes the character is exactly what I need. Other times it just doesn't really do it. So sometimes it gets patched in, sometimes it doesn't. It's a great compressor though, really good. And then we have an Art Pro VLA compressor. This is like a studio standard. It's surprisingly good for it being like 300 bucks. Like, it's not bad. Definitely worth picking up. It's not going to get you super gritty type of sounds, but it's a good compressor if you just need compression in the analog domain. We have this piece of rack gear, and we obviously have quite a bit of 500 series gear. We have 2 chromas, and these are basically preamps / saturators. So if I need a API or Neve style preamp, these have 2 switches right there that you can switch between API Neve, which is really cool. So it has nice character in there, and also has a saturator built in, so I can actually crank up the saturator to get even more bark and bite out of it if needed. Moving on from there, we got 2 R&D 535s, and this is again another diode bridge style compression. It's got a certain clean like grab. It's like clean but also vibey at the same time. Kind of, you know, it's like a dichotomy. It shouldn't be clean and vibey, but it should be either vibey or super clean or something like that. But it kind of bridges those two for a certain character. So just like the Buzz Audio one, it doesn't get used all the time, but when I do use it, I'm like, it's usually hitting just right. Next up, we have 2 parametric EQs from Tonalux, the EQP or EQ5P. These sound fantastic. They just have lots of character when I EQ with these. So the bass sounds phenomenal on there, and it has huge sweeping values for what you can do with bass. In fact, again, it's parametric, so all these you can sweep between what value you want, and then dial in your EQ and all that. So really great stuff. These were actually some of the first 500 series EQs we ever bought. So good job, Tonalux. They're cheaper now too. I think when we first bought them, I think they were like 700, 800, something like that each, and now they're like 500 or less now. So pretty good deal for those. Moving on, we got the Purple Audio Action FET compressors. These are very aggressive sounding compressors that are also very dirty. I don't know if it's just mine are specifically dirty because I did buy them used years ago, but they definitely impart a lot of noise to the signal when the compression hits hard. So when I use these, it's specifically for dirty sounding things. Like if it's a vibey drum loop that needs to sound super crunched, I will reach for the Actions almost all the time because they got that gritty character to them that doesn't work for vocals or like clean acoustic guitars or something like that, but it really works for drums or things that need to sound distorted. So I keep them in the kit for that reason. Moving on, we got the EMPEQ, another Pultec style EQ that is great from A Designs. Use that quite a bit on bass. In fact, I think it's on bass right now, possibly. Actually, I don't know. Oh no, I put this on guitar for the previous track. There was 2 guitar tracks in the previous, in the Heart Stop song, and this was on the rhythm guitar, and this was on the lead guitar, the 551. So both of these are great EQs right here. The Rupert Neve 551 is I can't remember the names. Oh, inductor, it says right there. It's an inductor style EQ. So it's very musical sounding when it gets EQ'd. And which is once again why guitar sounds really great on that. Vocals, guitar, all that stuff. So then I do have an extra 511 right here in the rack, just in case if I need another preamp, but that's patched in right there. Moving on to the next row, we've got another lunchbox. We've got 2 R&D 542s. They are tape emulators, and they get used, I'd say 60% of the time, because it's one of those things where at a certain point you can have too much analog warmth. So between like transformers, too much warmth, exactly. Between transformers and all that, and then also the bus summing transformers, sometimes it's too much actually, so we have to dial it back. But sometimes something needs a specific tape feel to it. So these guys come in handy for that. You know, you can switch between 15 and 30 IPS, and it's got the silk red and silk blues. Blues are a little more on the low end warmers, and reds are a bit on the high end, kind of gives it a bit more shimmer on there. They're great. Again, I don't use them all the time, but I would miss them if I didn't have them. So that's why they stay in the rack. Next up, we have a pair of the Little Peckers right here. These are what I use on Memes Voice, but they're also fantastic on a stereo mix if needed. Again, they just have a really great musical top end, and also the low end can have quite a bit of a certain low end boom that they can produce, which is really great. Next up, we have the Tonalux TX5Cs. These guys are also some of the first compressors we ever bought. In fact, between the EQs right here and the compressors, these were, I think, our first 500 series pieces of gear. Great compressor, very versatile. Doesn't always have character that I'm looking for, but it's one of those things where it's like a Swiss Army knife. If I need to stamp something down or kind of gently hug something in the analog domain, then I reach for those for just general duties right there. Then moving down, we've got the Drummer 1968. This is a tube compressor, stereo tube compressor, and this I almost always put on the stereo vocal bus because it just does something that I really, really like. I like it a lot. That's all I can really say about that. And then finally, we have the Drummer 1978 right here. This is a FET compressor, again, stereo FET compressor. This is almost always on my drum bus. Just, it's got a saturation built into it. It's got great character to the actual compression. You can do wet dry summing as well. It's great. This is just, I love this compressor. This is my go-to. It's always on, and anytime I'm doing drums out of the computer, it's always getting hit by this. So that's that. Awesome. The WA251 right here. We don't always have it out because it's not being used all the time, but
now we're,
yeah, using it more often.
It's coming out.
Yeah. So that's that guy right there. It actually doesn't really have a home specifically to like just sit somewhere. And that is one thing about the studio. It's like a guest bedroom. It's a 9x10 room, so our space is very limited. In fact, something that I didn't mention on the desk side of things is we don't really have speakers. We have speakers hung up on the wall, but we don't use them because we're almost always using headphones with our setup. So it's kind of like a trade-off. If we had a bigger room, like 20 by 15 or something like that, we totally have some nice monitors set up to be able to listen to stuff like that. But we've just gotten so used to just using headphones that's how we roll right now. So in the future, again, when things might end up changing. So Electron gear is sitting right here on this shelf. And then I have my modular right here as well. And then we've got a Korg mini log sitting right there. Sometimes the pieces of gear can rotate and change sitting on the shelf depending on what we do, At any point, I could grab some of these, put them on the desk, set up a mix. In fact, I'm planning on grabbing the Octatrack to do some experiments with the Tascam Model 12 because I'm in the process of experimenting right now. Over here, we have a PV bass. This gets used like 10% of the time, but whenever I do need a bass, like I'm always super sad if I don't have one that I can just pick up and play real quick. So it's nice to have something that's like a P bass essentially. So, and that gets the job done really good. I actually bought it for like $200 off of Reverb, and it sounds fantastic. So, awesome, right there. So let's head on over here to the guitars on the wall. We've got a PRS standard, awesome electric guitar. Then we have a Taylor 714 CE. This is actually a gift from my mom when I was in high school because her mom got her like a really nice saxophone, and then when I got into music, she was like, I'm gonna do that for my son. So she bought me a really nice guitar, which I had absolutely no right having an instrument of this quality when I was starting out, but it was amazing. So thank you, Mom, for that. And then we have a 1987 American-made Fender Strat. A guy that I knew wanted this to go to a good home, so he gave me an insane deal. Sold it to me for $300 because he was like, I want this to go to somebody that's gonna play it. He didn't want to just sell it, and yeah, so that guy he's the homie. So thanks for hooking me up. So I've had that for almost 20 years. I've had this for over 20 years. I've had this for like, I think 18 years. So yeah, moving back over to this corner because I forgot a few things. I do have this mic set up right here. It's an SM57, directly connected. I have the ability to patch it immediately into the patch bay if needed. So this is how I record some acoustic guitar if needed on a whim. Additionally, I have a Brooklyn ADC converter right here. This is our mastering grade converter, and this is how we capture the analog mixes coming off the board or coming out of the summing box. So that's clutch, sounds amazing. And below that, I have a Scarlett 18i8, which is exclusively used for being able to plug into an iPhone and capture an idea. So one thing that we do all the time is we'll come up with an idea that's, on the desk, and then Memes, you'll want to do like an idea.
Yes, it's a quick improv. It just comes out. Yeah. Sometimes, and I tend to forget my ideas, unfortunately.
There you go. So you gotta yeah, you gotta have a way of capturing that real quick. So what we do is plug in this guy, which is connected to that AT&i8, into an iPhone and hit record, and then idea captured. We can even do video, and so real simple way of doing that. But it's basically just a stereo lead that's being patched off somewhere. I don't remember where specifically. That's being bussed into the AT&i8, and that's how we can capture ideas, catalog them, put them on the phone, listen to them later, and then pull them up to recreate something. So one final thing, you might be wondering where these paintings come from. They are from my mom, who actually in the past 5 years has gotten more into painting. So every time we've gone over there, I've been like, hey, I'm gonna take this painting. And she's like, okay. So we've been putting them on the wall from time to time. So thank you, Mom, again, for the guitar and for the paintings. Yeah, that's our studio. Well, that is the studio tour. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
Memes, thanks for being the camera operator.
Of course.
For the DP.
It's always fun. Yeah, that's DP. DP right here.
Yeah, if you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. It helps out with the algorithm. Drop us a comment below as well. We try our best to answer them. Sometimes heavily technical questions can be difficult to answer over comments, so keep that in mind. But we do try our best. Yeah, we really appreciate all the support, and knowing that we just made this video, I'm probably gonna end up pulling apart the studio within 3 months and completely redoing it.
It's like, we did the studio tour.
Yep.
Time to, shake things up.
Time to completely rearrange.
Yes.
All right, that's the video. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Deuces.
Deuces.